Coming up on Network Africa, Uganda's government requires 10% jobs in the country before school resumes. Algeria bans Moroccan flights from its airspace as tension between both countries rise. Libyan commander Khalifa Haftar stepping down from his military duties that may enable him to run in December's presidential election. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. 1 year on, although infection rates and deaths are relatively low in the region, the coronavirus impact on economies and livelihoods has been damaging. That's according to the president of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, who was addressing the UN General Assembly debate. The Ghanaian president said the latest numbers from the African Development Bank indicate that the African economy, which contracted by 2.1% in 2020, are yet to return to pre-pandemic levels.
1 year on, although infection rates and deaths are relatively lower in the region, the virus's impact on economies and livelihoods has been damaging. The latest numbers from the African Development Bank indicate that African economies, which contracted by 2.1% in 2020, are yet to return to pre-pandemic levels. More than 30 million Africans fell into extreme poverty in 2020, and nearly 40 million could do so in 2021. The social impact has been devastating. Over 103 million African jobs have been lost. Women, who account for 40% of total employment, have been most hard hit. We're listening to the scientists. It is evident that vaccination is the way to protect populations and revitalize societies. To vaccinate 70% in the shortest possible time, as is being done elsewhere in the world, means some 900 million Africans have to be vaccinated. The Afro-Exim Bank structuring of the Africa Vaccine Acquisition Task Force $2 billion acquisition of 400 million Johnson & Johnson vaccines is part of the historic African Union's COVID-19 vaccine development and access strategy. It is a critical milestone in our collective fight against the pandemic, in a continent suffering the worst brunt of vaccine nationalism.
Well, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa, during his own address at the Assembly, he was speaking about vaccine inequity. He says it's an indictment on humanity, as over 82% of the world's vaccine doses have been acquired by wealthy countries, while less than 1% has gone to low-income nations.
Low income. It is an indictment on humanity that more than 82% of the world's vaccine doses have been acquired by wealthy countries, while less than 1% has gone to low-income countries. Unless we address this as a matter of urgency, the pandemic will last much longer and new mutations of the virus will emerge and spread. South Africa reaffirms its call for fair and equitable distribution of vaccines. We urge all member states to support the proposal for a temporary waiver of certain provisions of the Agreement on Trade-related Aspects of Intellectual Property Rights to allow more countries, particularly low and middle-income countries, to produce COVID-19 vaccines.
Algeria has closed its airspace to Moroccan civil and military aircrafts. According to a statement, the presidency said the move is in view of the continued provocations and hostile practices on the Moroccan side. Now, this comes less than a month after Algeria cut diplomatic relations with Morocco. The decision was made after a meeting of the High Security Council chaired by President Abdelmajid Tebboune. A source at the Royal Air Maroc, RAM, says the move will only affect 15 weekly flights, which link Morocco with Tunisia, Turkey, and Egypt, describing the impact on RAM as insignificant, and said the relevant flights could reroute over the Mediterranean. The Libyan commander Khalifa Haftar has taken a step that may enable him to run in the presidential election due to take place in December. General Haftar says he's stepping down from his military duties. He appears to be taking advantage of a controversial new law that says officials must relinquish their posts in order to stand in the elections, but it guarantees that they can return to their old positions if they lose. Now, this comes as the Eastern Parliament pulls confidence from unity government, signaling a threat to the months-long peace process.
Libya's Eastern-based parliament says it has withdrawn confidence from the unity government, though it will continue to operate as a caretaker administration, signaling a threat to the months-long peace process. The vote in the House of Representatives exemplifies the wrangling between rival factions and state bodies that has plagued UN-backed efforts to resolve Libya's decade-long crisis by establishing a unity government and holding national elections. Prime Minister Abdul Hamid Dbeiba addressed supporters in Tripoli late on Tuesday, accusing some parliament members of being obstructionists who bring evil and destruction to the country.
I am not surprised by those obstructionists. I am not surprised. But with God's help, Libya will have the parliament that should serve Libya and serve Libyans. Legitimacy is yours. You, the people, you decide. With God's help, in these elections and in others, Libya is for Libyans and can never be stirred from abroad.
Meanwhile, Libyans in the country's west say they are concerned about the Eastern-based parliament decision to withdraw confidence from the unity government, fearing it might threaten upcoming elections expected in December.
There are mistakes in the government's performance, and we ask them to correct them. We won't accept to pull confidence from the government that gives services to Libyans. We should not leave Libyan people facing their destinies alone. We agree that there are mistakes, but the only alternative is to support them to correct their mistakes before the elections.
The UN Forum decided that presidential and parliamentary elections should take place on December 24th, but disagreements now rage over the legal basis for the votes and the laws that will govern them. In the meantime, Eastern Libyan commander Khalifa Haftar says he will step down from his military role for 3 months, paving the way to stand as president in the December election. The election was mandated last year by the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum, a UN-selected assembly that set a roadmap for peace in Libya, a major oil producer, through installing a unity government and holding a nationwide vote. National elections were pushed as a way to end Libya's decade-long crisis, but have been enmeshed in bitter arguments over legitimacy that may unravel months-long peace process.
Tunisia's President Kais Saied has issued an order to extend the suspension of parliament, which includes the removal of the immunity of members of parliament. The president's office on its Facebook page also announced that Mr. Saied will carry out political reforms without elaborating or giving details on that. Well, the president has been criticized for violating the constitution and undermining democracy in the country after he fired the prime minister and suspended parliament in July. His opponents accuse him of staging a coup, but his measures have been widely welcomed by Tunisian citizens. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres is calling on all member states to take concrete actions, including policy measures and legislation to build on the current momentum against racism. The UN chief made the call at a high-level meeting to mark the 20th anniversary of the adoption of the Durban Declaration and Programme of Action.
If we understand, as Durban did, that the fight against racism is also a global, universal effort and a concrete struggle in every society, no country can claim to be free from it. If we act to redress the global, political, economic and structural power imbalances rooted in colonial rule, enslavement and exploitation that continue to blight our present, if we work to ensure that everyone feels respected in their individual identity while feeling valued as a member of a society as a whole, if we make sure that all of us, regardless of race, color, descent, national or ethnic origin, gender, religion, sexual orientation or other status, can live lives of dignity and opportunity, if and only if we stand together as one human family, rich in diversity, equal in dignity and rights, united in solidarity.
Ethiopia's disaster management official is blaming the UN and rebels over the failure of more than 408 trucks to return from Tigray region. Mitiku Kasa says the UN had failed to look after their truck drivers and ascertain the reasons for not returning, adding that the Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF, was also to blame for the 428 trucks still stuck in Tigray after delivering aid. However, TPLF spokesperson Getwa Reda said fuel shortages, harassment of drivers at checkpoints, and a lack of cash because of suspended banking services are all to blame. He's asking the government to facilitate the delivery of aid and the exit of trucks from the region. The United Nations had said that out of the 466 trucks that had gone into Tigray to deliver food aid, only 428 had not yet left the region. Well, there's currently a communications blackout in that region, which has been devastated by a 10-month conflict between rebel and federal forces. A multinational military force in Mozambique says it has rescued 87 women and children from a jihadist militant base in Mycomia in the conflict-hit northern province of Cabo Delgado. Soldiers from the force, combined Mozambican, Rwandan, and troops from the region located the base on Wednesday after a search in the forest of Quinterajo. The military says they rescued the 60 women and 27 children, 18 boys and 9 girls, and also killed 5 militants who had been guarding the base. All those rescued have been taken to the police district command in Mycomia. The search operation, however, continues, with sources indicating the existence of another larger base in the Namaluku region. Still to come on Network Africa. Somalia hosts its first public film screening in 30 years, raising hopes of a cultural revival in the country. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the program. We move to Uganda, where the government is aiming to vaccinate at least 6 million people against COVID-19. That's more than 10% of its population by the end of the year, before schools can reopen. About 4.8 million of these are categorized as high priority, and they include health workers, teachers, students aged 18 and above, and security personnel. The education sector will then reopen in January, except for universities and other higher education institutions, which have been cleared to reopen from November 1st. Well, the VOA's reporter in Kampala joins us now for more on this. Thank you, Halima Athumani, for joining us on the program. Let's begin with what the government's strategy is towards vaccinating 10% of the population.
Thank you for having me. So currently, the government is really struggling to get many members of the population immunized. And yesterday, there was a meeting, I think, between the Kampala City Council officials and Nile Breweries Uganda Limited, which is a beer making company, and Coca-Cola, which is a soft drinks beverage company. So what they've decided to do is take the vaccination into bars, and that is where they think that there'll be more people coming in to get vaccinated. So we wait and see what happens. But so far, there are many districts that are really trying, but of course we have those high populated districts that are still taking their time, and of course it's being marred by there's misinformation, there's fears of the side effects of the vaccine. We've had radio stations running adverts. Trying to what's the word that I'm looking for? They've been running adverts to try and relay people's fears, because there were all these rumors that some of the vaccines have the devil's DNA. So you find that for people outside of Kampala who do not have enough information, they actually take this for the gospel truth, which is not the case.
Well, you say the government, is struggling to vaccinate people. So what has been the reaction, from these people, especially their response to the mobilization of the public to get vaccinated?
Well, I did go to the two bars today. One bar actually had loads of people coming in, to get vaccinated. The other had, people kept walking in groups of 4, groups of 5. But, if it's a bar, I think the fact that the word bar was used, so it got quite a number of people excited. There was one particular guy who I met who was already tipsy. So you ask yourself, if bars are closed, why was he tipsy? But then, we've got bars that are operating or restaurants that are operating, and at the back you find there's a bar. But people are coming out. Most of those who actually came out today were first-time vaccinators. So hopefully the numbers will increase. This drive will probably go on for about a week. So we are yet to see what kind of impact it will have.
Well, just before I let you go, tell us how many doses, are available right now in Uganda, and what plans does the government have to, acquire more?
So remember, the government's target is to, aside from the 4.8 or let's say close to 5 million Ugandans that they want to inoculate before the beginning of next year, and so that they can reopen the economy and reopen schools, the government's total target is 22 million Ugandans being vaccinated. So far, the government has received about 5 million vaccines, but in the president's speech that was last night, he did indicate that Uganda is expecting a lot more vaccines. So far, there's an estimated 11,978,000 doses of vaccines that are supposed to be brought into the country from countries such as the US, France, Belgium, China, the COVAX facility, Ireland, and Belgium. So those are the vaccines that are expected before the end of November, and it will bring the number of doses in the country to about 11.9 million doses.
All right, then, the VOA's reporter in Kampala, Uganda, Halima, thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you for having me.
As part of efforts to stem the tide of communal and ethnic conflicts in Taraba State here in Nigeria, youths are advocating the need for dialogue and peaceful coexistence. At a conference in Jalingo, the state capital, the youths insist that peace is the only path to development. They also appeal to the state government to ensure equal opportunity for active participation in the politics of the state.
Taraba State, northeast Nigeria, has had its fair share of crises, many of them communal clashes.
Follow this movement and be rest assured.
Some youth in the state, under the aegis of the mission to save Taraba, converge on Jalingo, the state capital, to brainstorm on changing the narrative and bringing lasting peace to communities at war with one another. They lament losses incurred due to the constant fighting, particularly on tourism and agriculture.
It may interest you to know that the largest reserve in West Africa is in Taraba State. We don't have business going cap in hand every end of the month to receive piecemeal from Abuja. Taraba State alone can feed the entire Northeast. Our tourism potentials in Taraba alone can fetch us billions of naira. These are the things we are bringing on table, and I believe we are going to be changing the narrative.
The governor, Darius Ishaku, sees a brighter future for the state with more youth involvement in agriculture.
This place is empowering more than 30,000 dry season farmers. We are also empowering our dry season farmers up to the tune of also 30,000 along the Karim Lamido Fadama Plain. Recently, Donga Modern Rice Farming Production, in partnership with St. ADBA Agba Limited, is already in Donga empowering 1,000 farmers, particularly youth and women.
He wants them to take advantage of the state government's investment in the sector and stop overdependence on the government for survival.
Permit me also to use this opportunity to call on the entire people of the state, particularly youth, to engage in agro-business so that collectively we will eradicate poverty amongst our people in the state.
In addition to these efforts, the leadership of the youth group calls for promotion of equity and fairness and asks members to take advantage of the Not Too Young to Run law to position themselves in policy-making positions.
We now move on to South Sudan. The Interfaith Council for Peace Initiative in Yambio, South Sudan, has received a new peace center aimed at promoting social cohesion among all communities in the region. The center's conference hall, offices and washroom were constructed by the United Nations mission in South Sudan, thereby enabling it to host peace discussions with local communities. During the handover, community members welcomed this gesture from the United Nations mission as the world celebrates International Day of Peace. The Secretary General of the Interfaith Council for Peace Initiative, Elenama Jacobs, said that the new structure will ensure communities can engage fully in peaceful activities and resolve disputes before they escalate. Well, Somalia has hosted its first public film screening in 30 years under heavy security, raising hopes of a cultural revival in the turbulent country. This took place in the capital, Mogadishu, on Wednesday at the National Theatre, which was used as a military base during the Civil War when cinema-going ceased. Film goers enjoyed two short movies by the Somali director Ibrahim Siem, with tickets going for $10 each. Built in 1967, the theatre was seen as an important driver for Somalia's cultural development in the 1970s and 80s. It was closed in 1991 at the onset of the Civil War and was used as a base for warlords fighting over the city. It fell into disrepair as a result. Well, it then reopened in 2012 after repair by the African Union mission in Somalia, only to be blown up immediately by Al-Shabaab Islamist militants who considered live entertainment and films to be morally corrupt. It was formally reopened last year in a ceremony attended by President Abdullahi Farmajo after being refurbished by government workers with funds donated by the public, businesses and other partners. Well, that's it on the program for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke. Bye for now.